Hosted by the Men's Ministries Department of the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's Father's Day 2021. I'm Adise Jonas Murphy, and I'm delighted that you are with us today. I'm so delighted to have with me the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. He is the Prime Minister of Jamaica and also the President of the Jamaica Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, Pastor Everett Brown. Both gentlemen are known by you. They are known in the public sector, but today we get to look at them as fathers. Yes, we get to have a light conversation with them. I'm so delighted, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you so very much for having us today.
Well, my great pleasure in being with you and to see my longtime friend. I noticed that you both have taken off your masks. I'm very reluctant to do so, but I'm fully vaccinated, though the protocol still requires us to wear the mask, in circumstances like these, we are socially distanced. So I feel just a little bit more secure. So I'll take my mask off so that we can hear each other clearly and still observe the rules under the Disaster Risk Management Act.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Prime Minister. And Pastor Brown, thank you too for also joining us. Today's Father's Day, and let me start off by saying Happy Father's Day to each of you.
And let me join you in saying Happy Father's Day to all fathers in Jamaica.
Indeed. And to those who are also watching this very special interview. Now, we get to look at you both as fathers. I think Jamaica knows you, Pastor Brown, as the leader of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I was joking with you off camera, Mr. Prime Minister, that the nation refers to you sometimes as the father of the nation. But today we get to look at you both as fathers to your sons. You both have boys. You both parent boys. Let's go a little bit back though to what has shaped your present circumstances. Let's look at life growing up. So let's start with you. I'll go with you, Pastor Brown. What was life like? How was your family life growing up? And what kind of impact did your father make on you?
Thank you, Elise, for asking me. I'd like to join the Honorable Prime Minister in giving a shout out to all our fathers out there, those who are struggling. Just want to let you know that we believe in you. We believe that as fathers, irrespective of the challenges that you may experience, you can fulfill your purpose as fathers, even in these difficult times. I benefited immensely from growing up in a very secure home environment where my father and my mother were there daily to provide the nurturing, to provide the protection, to provide the inspiration. Yes, it was a rural community.
Which community was it?
The community, I'm proud to say that I'm from South Manchester,
Yes.
A little district called Ramble. I'm proud to be a product of Ramble. I'm inspired by what my father did. As a matter of fact, the way I behave, my overall philosophy of life and how a man who is a father ought to take care of his children's mother, how a man should relate to his wife, how a father should relate to his son or daughter, is really influenced by the impact that my father had on me growing up. And I did not really recognize how powerful it was until I became a father myself. And I recognized that my approach to relating to my sons, because like the Honorable Prime Minister, I have two sons. And the way I related to my sons really reflected the way my father related to me as a child.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's switch to you, Mr. Prime Minister. I'm hearing from Pastor Brown that his father not only had an impact on him in the sense of teaching him how to be a better man, but he learned not how to be a better man, in terms of parenting only, but he learned how to be a better man as it relates to treating his wife, because he saw how his father, treated his wife and other members of the family. What was life like for you growing up? What was your family structure like? What impact did your father have on you? What are some principles that you learned from him?
Well, as I was saying, I grew up in the heart of Spanish Town. And I grew up with my mother, her mother, my grandmother, and my mother's mother's mother, my great-grandmother. So I had 3 mothers in my family to take care of me, for direction, for guidance, for care. My father did not live with us. And so I grew up in a single family, single parent setting, but it didn't feel that way because I always had male figures around. And I would spend the summers with my father on his farm in St. Elizabeth. So, I would say that though I didn't grow up in the nuclear family, in the traditional family, I had tremendous love and care and support and affection and the attention of my father. And in later years, my father would have had even more significant impact on my worldview and outlook and perspectives. My father is a deeply intellectual person, deeply spiritual person, and that too would have shaped my own character. A man that would have had his own challenges in life, successes and failures, for which I would have had the benefit of learning from them as well. A particularly insightful person in the sense of he thinks very deeply on things, very in touch with his own emotions. And so that too would have had an impact on me to be able to understand people, to understand emotions, to control emotions, to understand personalities and deal with personalities. So, the benefit of my father was not just from the economic support perspective and the financial support perspective. There were obviously struggles there, but the benefit of the father, and not just my father, but the benefit of fathers generally, would be to help males, young males, understand their own emotions, to come to grips with themselves. One of the problems we're having in the society is the lack of understanding of the emotion of anger. And male anger is of particular concern because oftentimes male anger turns into violence. And young men growing up are not always in touch with that emotion. They don't always understand it and understand how to control it, when to use it, when not to use it. And mothers aren't always in a position to help young males come to grips with that. So I think that in my household, the males that were around me as role models and growing up with my father in the summers and so forth would have helped me to understand emotion, to control anger, to control desires, and to grow up with a personality that is in charge of myself. And that is something that when you reflect on the society, not all our males are in charge of themselves. We allow our emotions to get the better of us. We are not able to delay desire. We are not able to control aggression. And if I were to say what would be the greatest benefit of the parenting of my father, it would be to have that control over oneself.
What is it you think that made the difference in your life, though? Why didn't you turn out like one of the statistics in Jamaica? the absence of the father is usually linked to juvenile delinquency in some.
I think it's
young
precisely what I've said. You know, the typical definition of who is a man in the society is so much pinned to aggression and violence and dominance, being able to control. And that in itself could lead to some of the deviant behavior that you see, some of the behaviors that you describe as the statistic, getting involved in crime, getting involved in violence, being delinquent. But in my family, both from my mother and my father, was this strong ethos of controlling yourself. So some people would call it discipline. So there was strong discipline in the family, but there was also a strong delay of gratification. So we grew up understanding that you're not going to get everything you want now. So that delay in gratification also led to the appreciation of waiting for things, patience, a virtue that you can't extol too often, hard work, that if you want something, it's not going to come to you and you can't just take it. You will have to work for it. And then respect the property of others, demand respect for yourself and your property, and just generally your demeanor and attitude towards persons should be pleasant, and you should acknowledge authority. And that is what comes from having good parents that would help you to grow up being in control of yourself, of your emotions, of your wants and your desires. And I think that's the benefit for me of both my parents, and in particular my father. My father would have also helped, as I said, to open my mind to the political perspectives that exist, to think broadly, and not to accept the status quo, not to accept what people give you as the story, to question that story. So my inquisitiveness, my curiosity to learn, that was stimulated by my father, to ask questions about what is presented, to be cautious about what people tell you. That was also, I think, something that I would have learned from my father.
Thank you. Mr. President, the Bible instructs us to train up a child in the way he should go or grow, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. Training has been attributed, especially from a biblical standpoint, to the father. The father's responsibility is to train a child. But then we put this now in the context of Jamaica 2021, where in many homes, the father is absent. But then you're the leader of the church, the Adventist Church in Jamaica, where I'd say perhaps based on observation, majority of those who attend are women. What message do you send at this point to men who are, one, in the congregations, and two, perhaps those who are looking on, trying to make themselves better?
Thank you, Adis. I grew up in a community, in a family, a home, where early in our upbringing, we were exposed to the basic teachings of the Bible as to who we are. My father's father was a deacon in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And even though later on in his life he strayed from church, he sought, along with my mother, to inculcate in us the basic principles of honesty, integrity, respect for life, and as the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned, respect for property, people's property, to the extent that in our community, my father was a farmer, and we farm oranges, pineapples. We operated a 5 to 10 acre property, and beside us was a large orange grove. And even after our oranges were finished and the golden ripe oranges beside us were present, we did not and could not pick one, because our parents taught us to respect the rights of people to have their own property. And that was basically from our understanding of the Bible. The community in which we live, there were other children who did not embrace the values that we embrace. And so we believe that we benefited because of our exposure to the wider family, the wider church family, because within our church community, there was a sense that not only your biological father, but the elders in the church would be there to mentor, to encourage, and to provide the kind of second-tier example that my father would shape. Morning worship was critical. We had to recite basic Bible verses. Evening worship was very important, and during these periods we got the opportunity as children to share our deep emotions, to share our concerns with our father. And our father at that particular point in time would unmask himself, and so we got to know him a little bit better. So having God as the center in our lives, having a father and a mother who was there for us, having a wider church community. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 6, sons rather, hear your father's instruction and forsake not your mother's teachings. It is the instructions that we receive, the biblical instruction. It is the real-time example from my father. It is his honesty, the way he respected our mother, the way he treated us. He was very firm when it comes to discipline, but at the same time was accessible to us, was able to laugh with us, to play with us. We went to the farm with him when we were out of school. He did not benefit from the education that we benefit, but he was so focused on seeing his children get ahead in life, so that he worked very hard to ensure that we gained a high school education and of course later on a university education. And so the community in which we live was a fertile ground for honing principles and values that redound to who I am today, and by extension that which I'm able to transmit to my children. I believe that the church, even though a particular child may not have a father or a mother to instill certain values, I think the church, and not only the church, social clubs, because I spent a lot of time providing leadership when I was young to a youth club. And I think in those situations, fathers and adults can provide the stability, can provide the instruction, can model that which a father should exemplify, so that those young people within the community, I would love to see a situation where we take a community approach to how we transmit values to the wider society. And so I benefited from a very loving and accommodating church, and a wonderful community where my parents, my father, and the wider fathers in the community and church helped to reinforce the Christian values that were shared with us.
I'm happy you ended on that note, because the church and other institutions have a vital role to play in transmitting the values and nurturing especially our youngsters coming up. But Mr. Prime Minister, before I ask you to share the vision of Jamaica with respect to fathers and the roles that you would like to see them play, I'm going to ask you quickly to describe your relationship, your personal relationship with your children, your sons. Who are they? Tell us about them.
Well, I have two sons, and every morning that I wake up and I look at them, I thank God for them. I can see myself in them, but I see them as their own persons, and it is a transition for me to see them move from babies into men, because they're 16 and 18, they're heading into adulthood. So I'm still at that phase in fatherhood where, I'm missing having them as kids, but I'm learning to respect their individuality and their personhood, and to see them evolving, and trying to be there to guide them as to the decisions that they will make about what their life will be for the rest of their life. So, I think that I've been blessed, and it is a blessing. And I would wish for every single Jamaican father to appreciate their children as a blessing. And once you start with that you have been given a gift to nurture, I think the rest of it should fall into place. So I believe I'm close with my sons. I have a very open relationship. They are allowed to express their feelings, and they do express themselves. And I would say that is a kind of shortcoming in Jamaican parenting, where we have grown up with the notion that children are to be heard and are to be seen and not heard. And I think that has been very destructive to the society, that notion, because to enforce discipline, we've had to rely on physical force to the point where it is oftentimes violent. And all we do is just to say to our children, to correct something that we believe is wrong, you have to use violence in beating our children or physically punishing them. When what we needed to do is to take the time to reason, to allow our children to express themselves. So I think my children are very expressive, and they can express themselves. They can say what they feel, and they can be in charge of themselves and their emotions. And they understand the importance of being respectful of people. I mean, I'm a public figure. My family is in the public light, and so it is important that my children also model that they are respectful of the people in all ways and in all things. And I believe that they have generally been, but they're going to chart their own path. And I believe that from the household, they would have gotten a strong upbringing so that whatever life throws at them, they should be able to withstand. So education, the principle of getting a strong education, a good education, that comes from the household. To be, as I said, to be respectful of persons and their property and their rights. That comes from our upbringing. To be spiritual, to acknowledge that there is a God, that we don't know all things, and that there is a force in life that we should honor and respect. And of course, we try to encourage them within the Christian faith as Adventists. But again, it is their choice, what they choose to do. We also try to guide them along the path of charity. Charity is a very important principle, and it's important that every single household has this as an important principle that they seek to pass on to their children. This whole notion of caring for others who are in need in the society. And so we try to pass that on to our children. And that is the foundation of social responsibility, of understanding their civic responsibility and good ethics. And then importantly, there is a principle of integrity. This is not what you do when you are being watched. This is what you do when you're not being watched, when you're not under the supervision of some authority. So if something is wrong, it is wrong when it is found out, and it is wrong when it is not found out. That what you do it not because somebody is over you, there is some supervision. You do it because it is the right thing to do. And I have tried to imbue this sense of integrity, owning up to their responsibility, speaking truth, whether it is to powerful people or not so powerful people. Speak the truth. Don't be afraid to question. And these are important principles that I have sought to imbue in my sons, to ensure that they have these very critical, in my view, character shaping principles.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. President, your wife Lana, I'm sure Lana has played a significant role in your life. She's helped you to be a better father, a better man. Talk to us about hope.
A few days ago, and I am proud to say this, a few days ago we were talking to a group of young people, and I told them that after this many years of marriage, we still sense that we are in love. She has made me a better person. My wife is a stickler for details, perhaps from her profession as an accountant. She helps me to be who I am, give me the freedom to express myself, the freedom to achieve my goals. She is a supporter, and perhaps that's exactly what the Bible intended it to be, because the Bible tells us that we were created in the image of God. And the Bible tells us that our spouse is really our helper. And I do not see my wife as less than I am. I see my wife as complementing me, and I see myself as complementing my wife to bring out that which God intended for the human family, where I learn to the finer things of life, to be able to love, to be able to to care. Lana has taught me that it is okay to cry, and well,
It's fine.
a few weeks ago, I was talking to my eldest son, Jonathan, and I said to him, I said, Jonathan, when you were going through that difficult situation, I knelt down at my bed and prayed for you, and I cried. And he says, oh, Dad, why are you crying? See, it's normal. It is important for us to be able to share our emotions and to teach our children to be aware of their emotions and to be comfortable in sharing their emotions. And Lana has helped me to be a better person in managing my emotions, in recognizing my emotions, and to be a better pastor, a better person, a better husband, and a better father. I would not have been the person I am now had it not been for, and I'm saying it, God placing this beautiful woman in my life. And I want those fathers out there, those fathers to respect your child's mother. You don't have to be married. Respect your child's mother. Can I say this, Adis? Can I say this? I hope the men don't feel bad about this. But I remember many years ago when my mom went to the hospital to deliver one of her my brothers, and my dad was at home. And my dad went to the hospital, took home some clothing for my mom, and he was there washing and singing, and I went out and I saw him crying. And I said, Dad, what's happening? He says, Everett, I missed Hazel. That's the name of my mom. And guess what? I'm saying this for fathers to recognize the impact that you have on your children, and that the example you set for your children, especially in their formative years, how close you are to your children, will determine exactly how they will relate to you later on. And guess what? When my wife was pregnant and she was supposed to deliver our first son, Jonathan, at the Andrews Memorial Hospital, and I went and I saw Jonathan, and I went back home with the clothing, the delicate clothing. I did not give those to the helper to wash. I washed them, and after completing it, I said to myself, my father did that. And somehow, because of the impact of what my father did, I found myself responding the same way as an adult, as a mature, educated adult. So yes, Lana has impacted my life. My dad has impacted my life. And I hope that as I nurture my sons, that my sons will be able to positively impact the lives of their children and the wider society in the years to come.
Thank you, Pastor Brown.
I would want to just
Go ahead.
take off on what Pastor Brown had said about managing emotions. And I've been on this theme because I've seen in the society where our definition of manhood and maleness is one that is built on aggression and using the aggression in a dominant way in relationships. So the nature of relationships between the sexes has a kind of dominance which is imposed by aggression, oftentimes manifesting in violence. And on Father's Day, I would take the opportunity to say to all our fathers that your presence in the life of your child is critical, absolutely important. But it doesn't make sense to be present if what you're going to be teaching your children or those in your charge is violence. If you're going to use anger, it is the most destructive element in our society today. We see it in intimate partner relationships. Men feel that they are entitled to women, that they own women, and if they don't get what they want from a woman, then it is expected even to abuse them. You see it in relationships with your children. If your children don't give them respect, they're abused. You see it even sometimes, unfortunate that I have to say this, but it has to be said. We see it with a high case of incest and carnal abuse in our society, most times coming from fathers to daughters. It is a sickness in the society that unfortunately we have to say it on Father's Day, but it is important that it be said that the way in which we identify ourselves as males, or we define ourselves as males, it is too much reliant on the use of violence, of anger to dominate. And that has to change. That has to change. So on Father's Day, it is as good day as any to make an appeal to our fathers that the best thing that you could do, aside from being present in the life of your child, is to love your child and not to express this love in anger. Because oftentimes that is the excuse. It is because I'm showing you how much I love you and I care for you why I use violence or anger. And I think, I know I'm sparking a lot here, but it's important that we say to our fathers that nothing is wrong with expressing your love and emotion, your genuine care and emotion with your children. And a good way to start is to embrace.
Yeah, as in physically hug.
Physically hug and embrace. And I find that is very difficult for many fathers and indeed for many children, because they just didn't start out with the true expression of parental love and care. And I think that's very important. But the other important point is that you can instill in your child discipline and respect without violence. And it means that you will have to reason with your children. And one of the things that I try to do with my children, and from day one I made it a point of duty that I would never use corporal punishment on my children, is to reason with them. The ability to reason with them develops in them the ability to reason out problems and to express themselves. So they don't have a challenge in finding words to match their feelings, rather than to reach a point when they are confronted with emotions and they can't express it, the expression comes out in violence. And it is absolutely important that, particularly with fathers, that you are patient with your child. They might be acting out, allow them to. And you are there to keep them within bounds and within context and guide them so that they are able to confront the issues of life without resorting to violence.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, you've said so many things, and I don't think time is going to even afford us the privilege of delving into each of them. But something I must say, though, you know, the culture that the Jamaican society has, it's a kind of cyclical behavior. So what these males learn is what they give. Violence doesn't just happen like that. It happens from somewhere. So if I was beaten as a child by my father, as a male, then chances are when I grow up, I'm going to beat my child too. And so this cyclical behavior continues. But you mentioned something that's extremely important, the ability to reason with a child. Pastor Brown, I don't know what your experiences have been, but you see the wider Jamaican landscape. You see where our society is. You perhaps grew up in a time too. You perhaps grew up in a time where in order to train a child or discipline a child, physical punishment was the order of the day. But now we're being called to a higher action, a higher call, which is to reason with our children. How do we change the culture as a church?
I think we have to go back to the foundation, the Bible. I concur with the Honorable Prime Minister that it is critical as fathers that we do not only provide things for our children.
Not presents, TS.
Right, but we are there for them. I believe that as fathers or children, especially within the church, we are broadly speaking Christian community, that our children should hear us talking to God about them. So when I'm praying for my sons, I call their names. I believe that we can cauterize the level of violent acts that we see taking place in society if our fathers should recognize their importance, how important they are in the overall development of their sons and daughters, and by extension, the wider society. I am who I am because my father invested time in me. I could have been like other young men in the society, but my father invested time in me. He was there with me. And so I would love to encourage our fathers to not only to take time going out to football or cricket or basketball with your sons and daughters, but take time to read with them. Know what they're reading. Know what they're watching. Know the friends that they are keeping. Know where they are going. We could never leave home to go to some place, and our parents, my father, didn't know exactly where we were going and the time we are returning. So I believe that we can change the trajectory of the social ills we have experienced in this country if our fathers, the man of within the home, men in society, resolve that we are going to invest time, quality time, to inculcate in our young men and women those values that will enable them to grow up to be worthwhile citizens of this country, and by extension, fulfill the purpose for which God created them. I believe so.
Thank you, Pastor Brown. And our time is almost up. But I want us to end on this note, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. President. Not all fathers in Jamaica are bad. I think a lot of times we get we are a little bit skewed in our thinking that the absent father is what is pervasive in our society and is what occurs in almost every home, but that's not necessarily true. There are good men doing what the Lord has called them to do, train up their children. There are gentlemen who have taken up the mantle of fatherhood and are doing very well. How would you encourage those gentlemen, perhaps watching, to continue their positive roles in their children's lives?
Well, I want to agree with you that there are many fathers who continue to make the sacrifice for their children, continue to guide their children and support their children, who are role models. Were it not for them and the good mothers in the society and the good people in the society, the country would have collapsed. So there is no question that there are good people in Jamaica who do beyond and above what is necessary to ensure that the generations coming are successful. And for those fathers, I want to encourage them to continue, but I would also want to encourage them to encourage others, because we live in this big pool and we don't have good on this side and bad on this side. We're all mixed up together, and what we need more of is for the good people to stand up and to speak out. Unfortunately, sometimes what it appears to be happening in the society is that the good people are almost afraid because there is a loud chorus of criticism sometimes when people stand up and speak up for values and what is right in the society. And I would want to say to those fathers, don't be afraid of criticisms. Don't be afraid of people stereotyping you. You know you're doing good for the society. We need to hear more voices out there speaking up about the good work that is being done by our good fathers. We need to see more visible examples being done, and the work of the church is critical in this, in highlighting those in your congregation and in the community that are being good fathers and good role models. We need to see more of them in our social media, in our TV programs, on our radio, in our newspaper. We need to see them highlighted to displace from the front pages the negatives that we see on a daily basis.
Okay, this is just an aside before I go over to Pastor Brown. I did ask him about the impact of his wife on his parenting, and I'm going to ask you the same question. How has your wife, Juliet, made you a better father, a better man?
Well, put it here this way. You know, we have a partnership in parenting. So one thing I've never done is to leave up parenting to my wife, and neither my wife leaves up parenting to me. So we do make joint decisions, and it, you know, we really treat it like a partnership. We have to discuss everything as it relates to our children, and we make joint decisions on our children. Juliet has always been very supportive of my ambitions, politically and otherwise. In terms of family, you know, she is, in a sense, the anchor of the family, because when I've had to be out campaigning and so forth, she would be there anchoring. My wife, however, you would know, is an independent person in her own right. And from very early in our relationship, we made that decision that we would not sacrifice each other's careers. So you know, we work together to keep the family, but to support each other in our respective careers. Juliet then made the decision later on in life to come into politics and to further support me. And I think that without question, that has been a major factor in where we are today.
Prime Minister. Mr. President, as we prepare to close, let's talk a little bit about biblical principles that would assist fathers, assist young men who are potential fathers in becoming who God intended them to be. I want us to end with empowering them to be better individuals. What are some lessons that you've learned from the Bible and you can also transmit and empower?
The Bible speaks of God's love for His church, God's love for people. The Bible uses the example of the marriage relationship as a model for His relationship with people. I think if we go back to the Bible principle of being your brother's keeper, doing that which will help your brother to be a better person, the principle of honesty, the principle of respect for life, the principle of sharing, the principle of doing to others as you would have them do to you. I think if we go back to those principles, we'll find that the concept of the village, church, the community, assisting parents, assisting fathers in nurturing, training children to become good citizens and ultimately children of the kingdom of God. If we do that, we will find that there'll be this ripple effect, and we can, and I believe that the principles that as outlined in the Bible of respect for life, if we inculcate those in our young men, in our children, the society can be much better than it is today, and there is hope for families. I do not believe that men are all bad. I believe that the Prime Minister and I are good examples of good fathers and good men. I think what those of us who embrace the Christian philosophy must do, we must go beyond the talk and to practice, and others looking on, those we rub shoulders with, will be impacted by the way we live, the way we conduct ourselves.
Thank you, Pastor Brown. So we've come to the end. Yes, it's the end of a very special, should I say, Father's Day special. I had the privilege of speaking with the most honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, and also the President of the Jamaica Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, Pastor Everett Brown. I just have one thing to ask both of you before we go. Can you play marbles?
I haven't played marbles in years.
I used to.
Used to?
I haven't done it for many years. Yes, I used to.
Yeah, well, there's a little surprise that I have on set, and yes, I'm going to ensure that the Prime Minister and the President, and you could just give me one for goodwill. You do need some oil in your fingers.
No, I tell you.
And let's, all right, ladies and gentlemen, these gentlemen are pretty.
That one was fast.
Seriously? No, that one slipped. They are. Oh, okay, wonderful.
Very good.
And I did. What's the one word that you want to leave with those individuals who are watching right now? A word of empowerment, a word of hope, a transformative word.
Children are blessings, and you should love them, care for them, protect them, guide them, and give them a hug. Don't be afraid to give your child a hug.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, once again for hosting us. And Pastor Brown, thank you so very much for being with us today. We want to also say a very special thank you to the members of the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church. Of course, this program is put together, it's sponsored, it's produced by the Men's Ministries Department of the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm Adise Jonas Murphy. It was my privilege bringing to you this very special Father's Day edition. Until next time, until next year, God's richest blessings, and to all the fathers, happy Father's Day.